The gavel slammed down, but the sound was muffled to me, like I was underwater. Everything had led to this moment, this single echoing crack of wood against wood that signaled the potential destruction of everything I had built. Years of 80-hour weeks of ramen dinners and sleeping in my car, of fighting tooth and nail in a city that chews up and spits out the weak. And now, here I was, staring at a judge who held my entire future in his hands, while my own family sat across the courtroom, their faces etched with a satisfaction that sent a coldness through my veins. They thought they had me cornered. They thought they had broken me. But they underestimated what a cornered woman is capable of. My name is Chloe, and for years I poured every ounce of my being into Mitchell Realty Group. I started with absolutely nothing, just a phone, a relentless work ethic, and an unwavering belief in myself. The real estate market in Dallas was cutthroat, but I learned quickly. I flipped houses, secured commercial properties, and eventually built a boutique agency known for its integrity and its commitment to clients. I had finally created something to be proud of, a legacy that would last. Then came the summons. At first, I thought it was a joke, a clerical error, but the cold, hard reality set in as I read the document. A lawsuit filed by my own brother, Trevor, seeking to declare Mitchell Realty Group bankrupt. He claimed mismanagement, financial irregularities, and painted a picture of a company teetering on the brink of collapse, a complete fabrication. The backing, the financial muscle behind this blatant attack? My parents. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Trevor had always been jealous, resentful of my success. He coasted through life on their handouts, never having to work for anything. While I was grinding, he was partying, racking up debts, and blaming everyone but himself for his failures. Our parents, blinded by their favoritism, had always enabled him. I tried to reason with them, to understand. I called them, begging them to reconsider, to see the truth. My mother's voice was cold, distant. My father simply echoed her words, a puppet dancing to her tune. It was then that I understood. This wasn't just about Trevor's jealousy, it was about their twisted perception of fairness, their need to tear me down to elevate him. The hearing loomed, and I knew I was walking into a carefully orchestrated ambush. Trevor had hired a high-powered lawyer, a shark known for his ruthless tactics. My parents sat beside him, their faces grim, determined to see me fall. As the lawyer droned on about fabricated debts and alleged mismanagement, I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. This wasn't just a legal battle. It was a personal attack, a calculated attempt to destroy my reputation and everything I had worked for. I saw the gleam in their eyes, the anticipation of a juicy story. My grandmother, bless her heart, sat in the front row, her frail hand gripping mine. She was the only member of my family who believed in me, who saw through the lies and the manipulation. Her presence gave me a sliver of strength, a reminder that I wasn't entirely alone. The lawyer presented evidence, doctored financial statements, and testimonies from disgruntled former employees, all carefully crafted to paint me as a reckless, dishonest businesswoman. I listened in stunned silence as they systematically dismantled my reputation, piece by piece. The judge, a stern-faced man with years of experience, remained impassive, his gaze unwavering. I wanted to scream, to shout the truth, but I knew that wouldn't do any good. I had to remain calm, to play their game, to find a way to expose their lies. The weight of the situation pressed down on me, suffocating me. The blood rushed in my ears. My hands grew numb. They were winning. They were actually winning. The day dragged on, a torturous parade of accusations and half-truths. Each statement felt like a blow, each lie like a shard of glass piercing my heart. I watched my parents, their faces devoid of any empathy, any remorse. They were so consumed by their desire to appease Trevor that they were willing to sacrifice their own daughter. I felt a deep, profound sadness, a grief for the family I thought I had, for the love that was never truly there. As the hearing neared its end, the judge finally spoke. He addressed me directly, his voice calm but firm. He asked a series of questions about my financial decisions, about the company's structure, about my relationship with my brother. I answered truthfully, calmly, refusing to let my emotions betray me. Then he paused, his gaze shifting to Trevor. He asked a single, simple question, a question that would change everything, a question that would rip the mask off their carefully constructed facade. Mr. the person I trusted most was one of them. The courtroom held its breath, every eye fixed on Trevor. He stammered, his face paling beneath his carefully cultivated tan. He mumbled something about a loan, about savings, but the words lacked conviction. The judge pressed him, demanding specifics, bank statements, documentation. Trevor squirmed, sweat beading on his forehead. He glanced nervously at my parents, who sat stone-faced, their earlier smugness replaced by a dawning horror. It was then that the truth began to unravel. The judge, unsatisfied with Trevor's evasive answers, ordered a recess, instructing Trevor to produce the requested documents immediately. As the courtroom emptied, I remained seated, my grandmother's hand still clasped in mine. I watched my parents approach, their faces a mixture of anger and embarrassment. My mother opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "Don't," I said, my voice low but firm. I stood up, my legs shaking, and walked out of the courtroom, leaving them to face the consequences of their actions. The next few days were a blur of legal maneuvering and media frenzy. Trevor, unable to produce the required documentation, was forced to admit that the funds for the lawsuit had come from my parents' offshore account, an account that had been secretly funded for years through a series of shell corporations designed to hide its true source. The revelation sent shockwaves through the city. My parents, pillars of the community, were exposed as tax dodgers, their carefully constructed image shattered. The lawsuit was immediately dismissed, but the damage was done. My reputation was tarnished, my company's future uncertain. Clients began to pull out, deals fell through, and the vultures of the real estate world circled, eager to pick apart the remains of my empire. I tried to salvage what I could, working day and night to reassure clients, to renegotiate deals, to keep the company afloat. But the constant barrage of negative press and the erosion of trust proved too much to overcome. Sleepless nights became the norm, my mind racing with strategies and solutions, each one more desperate than the last. I watched my savings dwindle, my dreams fading with each passing day. The weight of the injustice pressed down on me, crushing me beneath its immense pressure. I had built everything from scratch, through hard work and determination, and now it was all slipping away, stolen by the very people who should have been supporting me. I tried to talk to my parents, to reason with them, to understand their motivations. But they refused to listen, blinded by their loyalty to Trevor, unable to see the devastation they had wrought. My mother accused me of being ungrateful, of exaggerating the damage, of trying to make them feel guilty. My father remained silent, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and defiance. Their refusal to acknowledge their wrongdoing only deepened the wound, solidifying my resolve to fight back, to reclaim what had been stolen from me. Desperate, I sought legal counsel, hoping to find a way to hold my parents accountable for their actions. But the lawyers I consulted were hesitant, pointing to the complexities of the case, the potential for a long and costly legal battle, and the risk of further damage to my reputation. They advised me to settle, to cut my losses, to move on. But I refused to give up. I couldn't let them win. I wouldn't let them destroy everything I had worked for. I decided to represent myself, to fight my own battle, to expose their lies and their corruption. I spent weeks poring over legal documents, researching case law, and preparing my defense. I learned about offshore accounts, shell corporations, and the intricate web of financial deceit that my parents had constructed over years. The more I learned, the more furious I became. Their betrayal wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a calculated, deliberate attempt to destroy me. As I dug deeper, I uncovered a pattern of behavior, a history of manipulation and deceit that extended far beyond the current situation. I discovered that Trevor had been secretly siphoning money from my parents for years, racking up massive debts and living a life of luxury on their dime. My parents, desperate to maintain their perfect facade, had covered for him, enabling his destructive behavior and sacrificing my well-being in the process. The realization solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about money, it was about justice, about holding them accountable for their actions, about protecting myself and my future from their toxic influence. The stress took its toll. I lost weight, my hair began to fall out, and dark circles formed under my eyes. I isolated myself from friends and family, consumed by the case, driven by a burning desire for revenge. My grandmother, bless her heart, remained my only source of support, offering words of encouragement and reminding me of my strength. But even her unwavering belief couldn't fully alleviate the pain and the loneliness I felt. I knew I was walking a dangerous path, consumed by anger and resentment, but I couldn't turn back. I had to see this through, no matter the cost. One evening, as I was sifting through a mountain of documents, I stumbled upon a hidden file, a series of encrypted emails between my parents and Trevor. I spent hours trying to decipher the code, finally cracking it open to reveal a series of shocking revelations. The emails detailed their plan to destroy my company, their motivations, and their strategies. They revealed the extent of Trevor's debt, the pressure he had put on them, and their willingness to sacrifice me to save him. But most damning of all, they revealed the existence of a secret agreement, a deal they had made with a rival real estate developer to sabotage my deals and steal my clients. The rival developer's name? Jonathan Sterling, a man I had considered a friend, a mentor. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. They broke me. I stayed silent. Because the plan had begun. The revelation hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. My breath hitched and my vision swam. Jonathan Sterling, my mentor, the man who had guided me through some of my toughest deals, was in league with my parents and Trevor, actively working to destroy my company. The depths of their betrayal seemed limitless, a bottomless pit of deceit and malice. I stumbled back from my desk, knocking over a stack of files, the papers scattering across the floor like fallen leaves. I sank into my chair, my body numb, my mind reeling. The world seemed to tilt, the walls closing in, suffocating me with the weight of their treachery. I felt a crushing sense of despair, a profound hopelessness that threatened to consume me entirely. Was there anyone I could trust? Was everything I had believed in a lie? The emails painted a clear picture. Sterling had been feeding my parents inside information, sabotaging my negotiations, and steering clients to his own agency. He had been playing me all along, feigning friendship while secretly plotting my downfall. And my parents, fueled by their twisted sense of fairness and their unwavering loyalty to Trevor, had eagerly participated in the scheme. They had used me, manipulated me, and ultimately betrayed me in the most profound way imaginable. The days that followed were a blur of exhaustion and despair. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping, consumed by the need to understand, to find a way out of the darkness. My company continued to crumble, clients fleeing, deals collapsing, the vultures circling ever closer. I watched helplessly as everything I had built, everything I had sacrificed for, slipped through my fingers. The bank foreclosed on my office building, my employees scattered, seeking new opportunities, and my reputation lay in tatters. I was alone, bankrupt, and utterly broken. One night, I found myself standing on the edge of the Trinity River, the dark water swirling below. The city lights blurred in the distance, a mocking reminder of the success I had once known. The weight of my failures pressed down on me, suffocating me with despair. The temptation to just let go, to end the pain, was overwhelming. But then I thought of my grandmother, her unwavering belief in me, her frail hand clasped in mine. I thought of the years of hard work, the sacrifices I had made, the dreams I had fought so hard to achieve. And I knew I couldn't give up. I wouldn't let them win. I stepped back from the edge, my heart pounding, my body trembling. The darkness still lingered, but a tiny spark of resolve had ignited within me. The next morning, I woke up with a newfound sense of clarity. The despair hadn't completely vanished, but it was tempered by a burning desire for justice. I knew I couldn't undo the damage that had been done, but I could fight back. I could expose their lies, their corruption, and their treachery. I would make them pay for what they had done to me. I started by meticulously documenting everything, gathering evidence, tracing the money, and building a case against them. I worked day and night, fueled by a potent mix of anger and determination. I contacted former employees, disgruntled clients, and anyone who had been wronged by my parents, Trevor, or Sterling. Slowly but surely, I began to piece together the puzzle, uncovering a web of deceit that extended far beyond my own situation. I discovered that Sterling had a history of unethical behavior, that he had cheated clients, manipulated deals, and even engaged in illegal activities. My parents had been complicit in some of his schemes, turning a blind eye to his wrongdoing in exchange for financial gain. Trevor, as always, was the puppet master, pulling the strings from behind the scenes, manipulating my parents and Sterling to his own advantage. The more I learned, the more determined I became to expose them all. I knew I couldn't take them on alone. I needed allies, people I could trust, people who believed in me. I reached out to old friends, former colleagues, and even some of my competitors, explaining my situation and asking for their help. To my surprise, many of them were willing to support me. They had seen what my parents, Trevor and Sterling, had done to me, and they were disgusted by their actions. They offered their expertise, their resources, and their connections, helping me to build a formidable team. Together, we began to plan our strategy, carefully considering every angle, every possible outcome. We knew we were up against powerful and ruthless adversaries, but we were determined to fight back, to reclaim what had been stolen from me, and to expose the truth to the world. I spent hours honing my legal knowledge, studying case law, and preparing my arguments. I knew I had to be flawless, to anticipate their every move, and to be ready to counter their lies with irrefutable evidence. I transformed from a victim into a planner, a strategist, a warrior. The fear and despair that had consumed me were replaced by a cold, calculating determination. They had underestimated me. They thought they had broken me. But they were about to learn what a cornered woman is capable of. I said nothing. They thought I was done, but I was counting every second. I smiled. I played their game. I met with my parents for lunch, acting as if nothing had happened, feigning ignorance of their betrayal. I even thanked them for their support during the lawsuit, all the while recording every word, every gesture, every subtle nuance of their expressions. I needed evidence, irrefutable proof of their conspiracy, and I was determined to get it. I installed hidden cameras in my former office, now under Sterling's control, capturing his interactions with my parents and Trevor. I hired a forensic accountant to trace the flow of money, uncovering the intricate web of transactions that linked them all together. The accountant, a wizened old woman with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue, reveled in the challenge, meticulously dissecting their financial records and uncovering their hidden assets. She discovered that Sterling had been funneling money into offshore accounts for years, evading taxes and laundering the proceeds of his illicit activities. My parents, eager to protect their own wealth, had turned a blind eye to his wrongdoing, becoming complicit in his crimes. Trevor, as always, was the beneficiary, living a life of luxury on their dime. The closer we got to the truth, the more reckless they became, their arrogance blinding them to the danger. They thought they were untouchable, that their wealth and power would protect them from any consequences. But they were wrong. One afternoon, I received a frantic call from my forensic accountant. She had discovered something truly explosive, something that could bring them all down. She had uncovered evidence that Sterling had bribed a city official to approve a zoning change that would benefit one of his properties, a clear violation of the law. The official in question was a close friend of my father's, a man who had been a guest at their dinner parties for years. The implication was clear. My father was involved in the bribery scheme, using his influence to help Sterling enrich himself. This was the smoking gun I had been looking for, the evidence that would expose their corruption to the world. But there was a problem. The evidence was stored on a secure server, protected by multiple layers of encryption. Breaking into the server would be difficult, potentially illegal, and could alert them to our investigation. I needed a plan, a way to access the evidence without raising suspicion. I reached out to a former colleague, a cybersecurity expert who had worked for me years ago. He was a brilliant hacker, a master of disguise, and a man of impeccable integrity. He agreed to help, warning me of the risks involved but assuring me that he was up to the challenge. He spent days analyzing the server's security protocols, searching for vulnerabilities, and developing a plan of attack. He created a sophisticated piece of software that would bypass the encryption and allow us to download the evidence without leaving a trace. The day we launched the attack, I was a nervous wreck. I paced back and forth, my heart pounding, my palms sweating. I knew that if we were caught, the consequences would be dire. But I couldn't turn back. I had come too far, sacrificed too much to give up now. My colleague worked tirelessly, his fingers flying across the keyboard, navigating the complex network of firewalls and security systems. Hours passed, each one feeling like an eternity. Finally, he broke through. The evidence was ours. We downloaded the files, carefully erasing our tracks and shutting down the connection. I breathed a sigh of relief, the tension draining from my body. We had done it. We had obtained the smoking gun. The emails contained details of Sterling's transactions, proof of the payments made to the city official, and even records of conversations between Sterling and my father discussing the bribery scheme. It was everything we needed to expose their corruption and bring them to justice. But I knew that simply handing the evidence over to the authorities wouldn't be enough. My parents and Sterling were powerful people, with connections in high places. They would likely try to bury the evidence, discredit me, or even retaliate against me. I needed to find a way to make the evidence public, to ensure that everyone knew the truth. I decided to leak the documents to the press, sharing them with a team of investigative journalists who had been following my story. The journalists were eager to get their hands on the evidence, promising to publish a series of articles exposing the corruption and detailing my parents', Trevor's, and Sterling's involvement. I provided them with the files, along with supporting documentation and expert analysis, ensuring that they had everything they needed to tell the story accurately and comprehensively. We agreed to coordinate our efforts, timing the release of the articles to maximize their impact. I knew that once the story broke, all hell would break loose. My parents, Trevor and Sterling, would be furious, and they would likely try to silence me, to discredit the journalists, and to bury the evidence. But I was prepared. I had anticipated their every move, and I had a plan to counter their attacks. I had hired a public relations firm to manage the media fallout, to defend my reputation, and to ensure that my voice was heard. I had also taken steps to protect myself and my grandmother, hiring security guards and moving to a safe location. I knew that the coming days would be difficult, but I was ready to face the storm. The truth was about to be revealed, and nothing could stop it. Their biggest weakness? They thought they were untouchable. The day the articles were published, the world exploded. The headlines screamed accusations of bribery, corruption, and betrayal. The story dominated the news cycle, trending on social media and sparking outrage around the globe. The evidence was damning, the details were shocking, and the public was hungry for justice. My parents, Trevor and Sterling, were caught completely off guard, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. They scrambled to contain the damage, issuing denials, launching counterattacks, and attempting to discredit the journalists who had published the story. But it was too late. The truth was out, and it couldn't be contained. The authorities launched investigations, subpoenas were issued, and their assets were frozen. Clients fled, business deals collapsed, and their reputations were ruined. My parents were ostracized by their social circles, their friends turning their backs on them in disgust. Trevor's lavish lifestyle came to an abrupt halt, his creditors demanding repayment, his sponsors withdrawing their support. Sterling's real estate empire teetered on the brink of collapse, his properties facing foreclosure, his partners scrambling to distance themselves from him. The fallout was swift and brutal. Sterling was the first to crack, his arrogance replaced by desperation. He tried to cut a deal with the authorities, offering to testify against my parents and Trevor in exchange for leniency, but his offer was rejected. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and the authorities were determined to make an example of him. He was arrested and charged with multiple counts of bribery, fraud, and tax evasion. My parents, facing the prospect of financial ruin and imprisonment, turned on each other. They blamed each other for their predicament, accusing each other of making bad decisions and betraying their trust. Their marriage, already strained by years of lies and secrets, finally imploded. My father moved out of their mansion, seeking refuge in a small apartment, his pride shattered, his spirit broken. My mother, consumed by rage and despair, vowed to fight back, hiring a team of high-powered lawyers to defend her against the charges. But the evidence against her was too strong, the case too clear-cut. Trevor, as always, tried to slither his way out of the mess, denying any involvement in the bribery scheme and claiming that he was simply a victim of circumstance. But his lies were exposed, his manipulations revealed. The authorities uncovered evidence that he had been the mastermind behind the scheme, orchestrating the bribery payments and manipulating my parents and Sterling to carry out his plans. He was arrested and charged with conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering. As the investigations intensified, I knew it was time to set the final trap. I decided to meet with Trevor one last time, to confront him with the truth, and to watch him squirm. I arranged the meeting at a secluded restaurant, a place where we had once celebrated our engagement. The irony was not lost on me. As I sat there, waiting for him to arrive, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and a sense of grim satisfaction. When he finally arrived, he looked haggard and defeated, his eyes darting nervously around the room. He tried to act charming, to feign remorse, but I saw through his charade. I knew that he was desperate, that he was grasping at straws, that he would say anything to save himself. He said, his voice trembling slightly. I stared at him, my expression cold and unwavering. "You destroyed it, Trevor," I said. He tried to deny it, to shift the blame, but I cut him off. "I know everything, Trevor," I said. "The bribery scheme, the offshore accounts, the manipulations." He paled, his eyes widening in fear. He knew that he had been caught, that there was no escape. "I can explain," he stammered. I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "Save your lies, Trevor," I said. I then revealed that I had been working with the authorities, that I had provided them with all the evidence they needed to prosecute him. He was stunned, his face contorting in disbelief. He whispered, his voice barely audible. I nodded, a cruel smile playing on my lips. "You betrayed me, Trevor," I said. As I spoke, the restaurant doors burst open, and a team of federal agents stormed in. They surrounded Trevor, handcuffing him and leading him away. He stared at me, his eyes filled with hatred and despair. The exact day they tried to end me, I exposed the truth. The click of the handcuffs was the period at the end of a very long sentence. As they led Trevor away, he locked eyes with me, a silent scream trapped in his throat. The arrogance was completely gone, replaced by a raw, animal fear. It was a look I knew intimately, a mirror of the terror I had felt when I first realized the extent of his betrayal. But this time, I wasn't the one in chains. Outside the restaurant, the flashing lights of the police cars painted the scene in stark blues and reds, a fitting backdrop to the unraveling of his life. News crews had already arrived, alerted by an anonymous tip, courtesy of my PR team, of course. They swarmed Trevor, cameras flashing, microphones thrust in his face, bombarding him with questions he couldn't answer. He stumbled, blinded by the lights, his carefully constructed facade of charm and innocence shattered into a million pieces. My phone vibrated with a text from my lawyer. Sterling just confessed. The dominoes were falling, and the entire corrupt structure was collapsing in on itself. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media appearances, and personal reckonings. The journalists released a steady stream of articles, each one revealing new layers of deceit and corruption. The public outcry was deafening, demanding justice and accountability. My parents, facing mounting legal pressure and social isolation, tried desperately to salvage what was left of their reputation, but their efforts were futile. The evidence was overwhelming, and the truth was undeniable. My father, stripped of his influence and his dignity, retreated into himself, a broken man haunted by his past. My mother, defiant to the end, fought tooth and nail, but her legal team eventually advised her to accept a plea bargain to avoid a lengthy prison sentence. She was sentenced to house arrest and a hefty fine, a humiliating end to her life of privilege and power. Sterling, desperate to reduce his own sentence, cooperated fully with the authorities, providing them with even more incriminating evidence against my parents and Trevor. He was sentenced to several years in prison, his real estate empire seized by the government. Trevor's trial was a spectacle, a circus of accusations and denials, of tears and recriminations. He tried to portray himself as a victim, claiming that he had been manipulated by my parents and Sterling, that he had been unaware of their criminal activities. But the evidence against him was too strong, his lies too transparent. The jury found him guilty on all counts, and he was sentenced to a long prison term. As the judge read out the sentence, Trevor looked directly at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and despair. It was a look I would never forget, a reminder of the pain he had inflicted on me and the justice I had finally achieved. After the trial, I visited my grandmother. She watched the news intently, her eyes sharp and knowing. She took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "You did the right thing, child," she said, her voice raspy but firm. Her words were a balm to my soul, a validation of my actions. I had done what I had to do to protect myself, to protect my family, and to expose the truth. The dust settled, the legal battles were won, and the guilty were brought to justice. My life began to return to some semblance of normalcy. I rebuilt my company, stronger and more resilient than ever. I surrounded myself with people I trusted, people who believed in me, people who had supported me through the darkest of times. I learned a valuable lesson about the importance of loyalty, the power of truth, and the resilience of the human spirit. In the end, they lost everything: their wealth, their power, their reputations, all gone. They were left with nothing but the consequences of their actions, the bitter taste of their own betrayal. And me, I just smiled. A genuine smile born not of malice, but of relief. The weight of their deception, the burden of their lies, had finally been lifted. Revenge isn't sweet, it's necessary. It's a survival mechanism when the world turns against you and justice seems like a distant dream. It's about reclaiming your power, your voice, your life. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.